Okay, so it's on the hour now, so let's get started. So what we're going to be talking about today is content marketing, and I'm going to start with a bit of a explanation of what content marketing is. Before that, a little bit about myself. So my name's Matt Wilkinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Bizink, and I've been working for over 15 years now in online business. Um, I've been working exclusively with accountants and bookkeepers since 2010, and we work with firms across the English-speaking world, so Australia, New Zealand, but also US, Canada, and the UK. And Bizink is now a preferred website supplier to MYOB partners. So the way we're kicking off that partnership is Marketing Quick Start, so this series of webinars covering all aspects of online marketing. So what we're going to cover in the webinar today. So we're going to have a look at what is content marketing, what kind of content should you create, where should you publish content, curating and sharing content, and the final part I'm going to talk to you about getting external help if you're struggling to get content created and pushed out there. So what I'm going to start with is talking about what content marketing is. I kind of hate the phrase content marketing. It's kind of boring, but the actual subject is really interesting. But I think it's one of those subjects that creates quite a lot of confusion. So let's talk about first what content marketing isn't. So it's definitely not, your traditional kind of listing in the yellow pages. It's not, a radio advert, which is maybe a way that you used to promote your practice. It's not really networking events. So, what I'm saying there is there's some of the things that how marketing used to work, kind of those traditional advertising type mediums or media. That's really not what content marketing is. So what some of the things that it is would be using blogs, social media, webinars like this, videos on YouTube, those kind of things that we tend to think about what modern marketing is. But I still don't think that gives us that much clearer of a definition of what it is. Another way that people like to talk about content marketing is inbound marketing. So this outbound versus inbound. So outbound marketing has become very ineffective. So outbound marketing is things like traditional advertising, like an ad in the yellow pages, a classified ad in a newspaper, billboards, even television advertising. Because of the internet, that has really dropped off the effectiveness of that stuff. Now people have information with the internet. You've got the ability to find information out about brands. You're not relying on them to give you the information, and that's kind of made things a lot more democratic, and it's also made people less trusting of brands. So whereas outbound is like pushing your messages at people, and that's what's becoming effective. Inbound marketing, well, I would say is another word for content marketing. That's about pulling people to you. And the way you do that is with content. It's about creating content that makes people interested enough to come and check you out as a business. So yeah, content really drives inbound marketing. It's really the fuel for it. And what you're doing is giving away something to get back. I think that's the overarching principle of all of this content marketing. You've got to give something away, and that pulls people towards you. And one of the great things about content marketing is it's ideal for accountants and bookkeepers. So look, you should have expert knowledge, I hope. And if you do, content marketing is ideal for anybody who's working in a very specialist field, because it lets you prove that knowledge. So something I'm going to be talking about during the webinar is this kind of concept of showing rather than telling. And that's a kind of basic marketing or sales principle that, if you tell someone you're great, well, that's just bragging, that's boasting. If you can show them that you're great, then that's way more powerful. And that's what content lets you do. It lets you kind of prove your expertise. And so it's ideal for the kind of the industry that we're working in. And one of the things we get asked about content marketing, what is it? How do we do it? I think you'll be doing it already. When you talk to clients and you're answering their problems, you're doing content marketing on a small scale. You're helping them with your knowledge, and that pulls them closer to you. And what we're going to really be talking about today is how you can take those kind of conversations and scale those into marketing that kind of gets you in front of more people and has that same effect, but amplified across the network. So another way of looking at content is it's like the fuel for your marketing machine. If you look at all the successful firms with a really good website presence, online presence, they're all pushing out content. You look at the firms who are really active on social media, they need content to do that. Firms who are doing some really great kind of webinars, they need that's content. And the other part of it is that, if you think about your website, your social media, email marketing, search engine optimization, all of these things are reliant on content. So if you think of it that way, you can create all these things like set up Twitter, you can set up Facebook, you can set up a really good email marketing system, but without content, the machine doesn't work. So I thought, final kind of part in this, like trying to define what content marketing is, give you the example of what's happening right now, this webinar, this marketing series, Marketing Quick Starter. So, what we're doing here with Marketing Quick Starter, 6 different webinars. What we're going to do with those is record them. So this session's being recorded and we'll post that on YouTube. We're going to put the slides on SlideShare. There have been blog posts about this webinar series on the MYOB Pulse blog, on the Bizink blog, on LinkedIn. Social media campaigns by MYOB and Bizink. So there's been lots of tweets going around and posts on LinkedIn. We're doing content giveaways and backing all that up with email marketing campaigns. So this to me is, I'm not suggesting you have to go away and run a webinar series, but this shows you how content marketing works, because we made a partnership with MYOB. If we just gone out there and done this outbound type marketing, just pushed out an advert talking about a commercial deal, I don't think many of you would have been that interested to listen to that. It's just more kind of marketing noise. But if we, as we've done here, we've put together all of this content, and that, that positions us very differently than just somebody who's trying to sell you a website, trying to sell you online marketing. We're now having a conversation, and that's very, very different than, just straight outbound marketing. So I'll just end things up. I don't really like putting quotes up on screen, but I think this is a really good one, which kind of sums up that showing versus telling thing. This is a Content Marketing Institute. So you want to be a rock star. You don't tell people about it. You've actually got to go and do it, and that's what content marketing does. So I want to have a little look at what kind of content should you create. I'll differentiate at this point. Like, we're going to talk here about the types of content you should create, not necessarily how you should distribute it. So I kind of want to make that division between, for example, some content that you create, you might distribute that through social media. That's something that we'll discuss in some of the other webinars. But for this one, I just want to focus on the type of content that you should be creating. So before we talk about that, let's talk about the type of content you shouldn't be creating. Actually found this content on a real accountant's website in Australia. I'm hoping they're not going to be on this webinar today, but compliance content, like nobody reads this stuff. They're super boring kind of tax content, and you see this on so many accounting and bookkeeping websites. And I'd say accountants are worse offenders for this kind of content. And honestly, no business owners are interested in reading this stuff at all. In terms of compliance, they're hiring you so they don't have to think about this stuff, and they certainly don't want to. They certainly don't want to read about that. So the type of content that they are interested in, it's stuff that answers their pain points. You'll know, you talk to your clients, you'll hear these kind of pain points that they've got. That's what you should be focusing on in terms of creating content. And I've got what we call like a pro tip here. So Heather Smith is a well-known bookkeeper and writer, content producer in Australia, and that's exactly how she creates her content. She looks at what clients are asking her, and then creates a blog about it. So that means that next time she's asked that question, the blog's there. So not only is that really, really useful, it's a big time saver for her. And over time, that really kind of her blog has grown into a real expert resource. So that's a real simple way to get started with content. Every time you're asked a question, just try and create a small piece of content about that. Doesn't need to be War and Peace, doesn't need to be the best piece of writing ever, just has to be useful and kind of answer that pain point. So, as I say, how to get ideas, answer a client question in detail, because your clients are going to have the same issues as prospects, as the people who you're trying to grow your business with. So create content for your clients, and as long as, hopefully you've got the right type of clients and you want more of those clients, their issues are going to be the same as your prospects. And being specific is really good. One of the things that I see with firms when they're trying to get started with content is they try and go a bit too broad and try and be a bit kind of they want to answer the big questions, but it's fine to answer something really small. How does a specific part of the MYOB software work? Just answer one little question on that, or some little quirk that some businesses software does, or you don't have to answer kind of how they can grow their business and become a millionaire. Just answer some small little problems, and that's absolutely fine. This is a firm that we work with in the States. They're really active bloggers, and they do the same thing as Heather Smith there. So answering those routine questions on their blog, and they get there's certain clients that are always being asked about these estimated payments, so they can just refer to that blog post. And what's great about that is, if you answer a client's question in an email, that's good, that they're not going to be unhappy. But if you've already answered that in a blog, it's kind of like an added bit of credibility there, because they think, oh yeah, they've already thought about this problem. In fact, they've thought about it so much, they've created a blog post. So it's not only a time saver, it's elevating you in the eyes of your client or potentially a prospect. So, like I mentioned, in terms of getting really specific about where you should publish content, we're going to talk about social media next week in the webinar, email marketing, and a bit on search engines after that. But I wanted to put in some kind of principles of where you should publish your content. The first thing to think about is the message is more important than the medium. So when I see a lot of people getting started with content, they're obsessed with creating a blog post, or they really want to do an ebook without thinking what's the message, because the format of the content is actually um, not as important as you'd think. And also, like I showed you with that webinar example earlier, like we're doing, you will repurpose your content in different ways. So by repurpose, I mean you might write a blog post. Well, you could turn that into an ebook. You could turn that into an infographic. It could be the script for a video. So the message is way more important than the medium it takes. So that's the first thing. Don't necessarily start with I want to write a blog post. Start with I want to answer someone's pain point or question, and then the format that it will take can drop out of that. The second thing to think about is where is your audience, and that's gonna really determine how and where you should publish your content. Um, you know, broken down really simply, marketing is about like thinking, okay, who do I want to sell to? Where are those people? And then you go and communicate with them there. There's not much more to it than that. And so if your audience is, if your clients and potential clients are, let's say it's tradies, then I'm gonna say a blog might not be the best place, because I don't know, I got a couple of mates, one's a builder, one's an electrician, and I don't think they're avid blog readers. It's just not what they do. So that might be a generalization, but I'm going to say that's probably about right. But I do know a local firm in the area where I live. They sell, they work with a lot of tradies, and their medium is events. They put on events. The events have free beer and some pies in them as well, which seems to attract a lot of those kind of people, and it just works. So think about your audience. If you've got a very tech savvy, switched on kind of client base or audience, then blog might be the right place. It could be that Twitter's a good place. It all depends on that demographic. We were talking to a firm the other day who are really aiming at millennials, and they're doing some of their marketing through Instagram. So that's not going to work for every firm, but for her, it works really, really well. So that's what's going to determine your content a lot, is thinking about your audience and where those people are. So with that in mind, I think there probably are some main types of content that you're going to want to think about creating, and the one that I'd probably say is a really good place to start with and focus on is having a blog. A blog is it's a nice kind of digestible size of content. Making a blog post could be 300, 500 words, maybe do the odd longer blog post. It's not a huge commitment, like, for example, doing an ebook or even doing a webinar. It's hard work. You've got to put the slides together, the content, you got to deliver the thing, and it's a bit more stress than just writing a blog post. So I think a blog is a really good place to start. There's lots of benefits to having a blog on your site. It keeps it looking fresh. Search engines really like a blog, and if you've got an active blog, a lot of other stuff drops out of that. So if you can blog once a week, then you can tweet about that. You can put that on Facebook. You can repost it on LinkedIn. So doing the one thing, it then drops out into those activities. Or what we recommend with our clients is they put all their good content on their blog, and then you can create an automated newsletter from your blog. So you're focusing in one place, which is good, because most accountants and bookkeepers we work with don't have enough time to do marketing. So instead of kind of a scattergun approach, just focusing on that blog, pushing it to social, pushing it to their newsletter can work really, really well. ebooks, guides, or reports. So I guess what I mean here is that kind of like long form content of several pages, which you've sort of had designed into a PDF or something like that, can be really, really effective. If you create something that really answers multiple pain points of your audience, then it could work really well in that type of format. And it could be that you write your blog and then pull together several blog posts to create an ebook that could work. It could be that you run a survey of your clients or businesses in your area, and you use that to create a report. And that's a really good way to position yourself as a bit of a thought leader as well. I guess the downside on that is it's going to take a little bit longer to do. And there's maybe a bit of cost there in terms of you probably want to get some graphic design done around it. Good visual content always works well, so it's worth spending a bit of cash to make something like that look attractive. Video is really, really effective for accountants and bookkeepers, and can be done quite easily, but it can also be quite complicated and expensive. Where I've seen it done well, I was looking at a firm we worked with yesterday, and they have I don't know about hundreds, but tens of videos in YouTube that they've created, just answering those small pain points. They're not really professional videos, but they're very authentic, and they're very useful, and they just put them on YouTube. So video in that way can work really well. Obviously you can do one that's a lot more polished, but once you get into video production companies, it's you're talking several grand just to get something quite short produced. The money to do a real kind of slick video can be quite eye-watering. So I've sort of lumped in events and online events together. So I guess online events are things like this, like a webinar. Can be really effective, and not that hard to put together. You certainly a lot easier than I would say a physical event, but nothing beats that face-to-face kind of meeting with clients and prospects than an event can do. And although that probably falls into that traditional marketing camp, I still consider that content marketing. If you're doing an event where you're sharing some free knowledge, that certainly falls into the realm of content marketing. And even for the kind of very cloud-based, kind of future-focused firms, I think you'll find most of them still do events in one way or another. That they're very valuable. Infographics is something that can look really, really good. So if you don't know what an infographic is, it's like it's basically a very visual piece of content, where often with a lot of statistics on there. So let's use that example. You've done a survey of some of your clients. You've got some stats. Instead of just putting those into kind of a kind of very boring format, you get a graphic designer to create it in that kind of real kind of modern, almost cartoony style. What they're great for is social media. That kind of visual content gets engaged with and shared a lot more than just straight kind of text-based content. And the final thing is email, which kind of gets neglected in all of this. I remember reading a blog post from actually somebody who's considered a marketing thought leader, saying that email marketing was dead for accountants and bookkeepers. And I just thought that's absolutely crazy, because email is the one thing that will actually give you the most predictable results. So the email newsletter is the one that everyone knows. And that's certainly not dead. It's really useful, and if you putting good content in it, it will get read. Sure, if you've got a really bad newsletter that's just very generic, then people won't read it. But a good newsletter will work really well. and also good content that you're pushing out to people who are to prospects as well. So for example, drip marketing is one of the most effective things you can do. So drip marketing could be, for example, sign up for a course. So kind of like this, where we've got this Learn MYOB course, where people could sign up and then they get that course over 7 days by email. That kind of stuff is some of the most effective marketing that you can do, and definitely falls within the realm of content marketing. So jumping back, they'd be the main things that I would focus on. I mean, we could talk about some other forms of content that you could create, but I'd say a blog, really, really important to have a blog. And then some of those other types of content, it could be something you considered given time, budget, or the audience that you're trying to reach. So I just wanted to insert something here about capturing data. If you read some of the, I guess, the top rated people on content marketing, so people like Seth Godin, will say never kind of do what I've got on screen here, which is like ask for people's email address. Just make all your content freely available, and then people will just come to you. So I kind of call that like field of dreams thinking, build it and they will come. And frankly, I don't think it works for accountants and bookkeepers. If you're a massive brand and you've got a huge marketing budget, and you're not relying on your marketing delivering constant results, as in not every dollar has to have ROI on it, then okay, don't put your content behind something like this. But I would suggest that you will want some of your really valuable content. You'll want to try and capture somebody's data, and then you can do things like the drip marketing that I was just talking about. I would suggest that's really, really important, and just giving away everything freely. I mean, give away, definitely give away lots. You don't want to put like your blog behind any kind of restriction. But if you create a really great ebook, people will have no problem giving you their email address, and that's the way that you're going to get leads from your website. And that's something that we're going to talk about in the final webinar of the series is lead generation. And you'll see that, we'll talk about the kind of the mechanics of it there, but content plays a hugely important role in that. In that, if you think of, if you have on your website, sign up for our newsletter, nobody does it, right? Now, why would you? You just, every site's got that arm. Why would you sign up for it? If you say, we'll give you a free course or some free content, and you've just got to give your email address, yeah, well, you think about it then, because you're getting something in exchange. So content's really important in your online lead generation. So the next thing I wanted to look at was curating and sharing content. And what if you're active on social media, or even go on there now and again, you'll see people sharing content constantly, and we all know that person who's just like, even if it's on like Facebook, on your personal Facebook, who's just sharing links that kind of almost like spam, just like junk stuff all the time. So if you're going to share content in a business context, it's really important to focus on quality over quantity. We're all drowning in content. I mean, I can't remember the statistics, but it's like, like every day more content is produced than, the history of the world ever, or something like that now. So we don't really need that much more content of a kind of like a low quality just being pushed through at us. What you've got to do is try and cut through that noise. So if you're going to share stuff, it can be really valuable. It can help you, get out there a bit more without producing your own content, because, obviously you've got limited time or budget or both to be creating content. So sharing content can be really good. Curating, kind of by that I mean, finding other content, putting that together, and then adding your own spin to that. I think that's really important. Is don't just retweet or repost content. Try and add something to it. Maybe just explain why you've reposted it. And what you'll find is if you do that, you'll get far more engagement than just kind of blindly reposting or retweeting things. One way you could do that is what I call like digest blogs or digest newsletters. So it could be, top 10 stories in cloud accounting, or it could be something very, if you work with a certain industry or niche, then it could be something very focused like that. Because then what you're doing is, it's more than the sum of its parts. You're actually adding value to that content by pulling together related stuff that somebody, your reader doesn't then have to trawl through the internet and find these things. They can just go, okay, yep, I get that newsletter every month, and they always post 10 interesting articles. So that kind of stuff, do that extra 5% of work, add your own spin, or be a bit more considered in the way you post things. You'll see a lot more benefits in doing that. The other thing to have a think about is like, the kind of, I guess we're talking about pain points and creating content around those. The biggest pain point we find in working with accountants and bookkeepers is time to do marketing. And if you are lacking time, then looking to get external help to create content could make a lot of sense. Because content is really hard, right? Look, Bizink is a content company, and we find it hard to kind of keep our blog up to date, do webinars like this, be active on social media. It's a whole bunch of work, and that's what we do for a living, kind of thing. Because you've got to have the knowledge. You've got to think about what you're writing about. You've got to have the skill to actually create that content. And you got to have the time to do it, and I think you've all got the knowledge and the skill. The time part is the one thing that is harder to kind of manage. And there's this misconception that content marketing is free, in that you write a blog post, well, you've not necessarily you don't paid anything for that, but how long did it take, or think of any amount of content you take, it's going to take time. So there's a cost there, and so it's worth considering. Two options I put up there. Like, you've got a specialist company like ourselves. I mean, I'm not just trying to turn this into an advert for what we do, but there are specialist companies out there who can help you with accounting and bookkeeping content. That's all we do at Bizink. Or you can look to hire a freelance writer, and I think both of those options are probably less expensive than you think, if you compare them to the time you might spend creating content. Like we have a library of blogs that you can get access to, pretty more blog content in there than you could possibly use, and it's like $99 a month. So if you put that against the time it might take you to create one blog post, it probably works out quite well. Likewise with freelance writers, they're very efficient. So what might take you half a day, they can probably smash out in an hour or two, and the end result is going to be better. I think that's the thing, is that the analogy I always give is like, I could do my bookkeeping, but it would take me probably a week, and I would do it all wrong, and then, and then my accountant is going to shout at me and be like, you need to fix all this up. It's the same with your writing, isn't it? Like you maybe you can do a blog post, but if it takes you a day and you hate it, and the end result is only average, you could pay someone a couple $100 or whatever, and they can create something really good for you. So that's the other option, is if if you're struggling to find the time to do it, then external help is out there, and the internet's made that very easy to find. So some final thoughts during this kind of marketing quick starter webinar series. I've been talking about our marketing framework, which is you need to be different, you need to be credible, authentic, and visible. And content really cuts across all of those things. If you can create content in your own voice, then you're certainly going to stand out and be different, credible. If you're writing about the issues that your clients and prospects have, that certainly establishes you as credible. Authentic. Well, if you can bring across your personality in what you write, I mean, certainly a blog is a much better way to bring across your personality than an ad in Yellow Pages or your services page on your website. You can really show your unique voice in there. And finally, visible. That blog post can be then on social media, can be pushed out through email, all of those things that we've talked about. That's what content can do for you. So it really cuts across all of your marketing. So summing up, think of content as the fuel for your marketing machine. Whatever marketing methods you prefer. So whether it is email marketing, social media, events, you need content to fuel those things. And what you're doing with your content, you're trying to focus on pain points. That's always the place to start. That's the place where business starts, right? You're trying to meet a need and solve problems, and that's what your content has to do as well. Remember that the message is more important than the medium. So don't start necessarily by trying to write a blog post. Try and answer the pain point, solve the problem. The content can drop out of that. And it could be that way I sometimes create content. I think of something, an interesting topic. I just open a Word document and just start throwing in words, and it might be something I thought was going to be a short blog post, and I end up writing 2,000 words on it. So I think, well, that's a bit long. Maybe we can make that into 4 blog posts, or we can maybe turn that into an ebook, or actually there's enough content in here to do a webinar. It can be all of those things. So just don't get too hung up on trying to do a certain type of content. Just create something really interesting, and then it will work itself out from there. And that's what I'm just the repurposing thing is what I'm talking about there. A blog post can become a video, or can become social posts. You can break things up and use them in different ways. Sometimes you can go back and think, I'll find something that I've written in the past and then maybe repost it on LinkedIn. So there's lots of ways you can reuse your content once you've got it created. With sharing, that can be valuable, but just be aware that everyone's doing that now. Social media is full of people sharing links and that kind of thing. So if you're going to do it, focus on quality over quantity, and try and add your spin. As I was saying, rather than just, like, for example, retweeting a piece of content, tell people why you're retweeting it. Tell them why they should read that content, and you'll get a lot more engagement. And the final part, as I've just been talking about, sometimes paying somebody to do something is better value than free, especially if you're very busy, or like around tax time. Then if you're not going to get content out there and it's going to take you half a day, just get somebody in, and that can really speed up your content creation process. So I'm going to stick around now to answer your questions. I hope that's been useful for you. So I'm going to stick around and answer any questions you've got about content. Next event, which will dovetail nicely into this one, is on social media. So we're going to cover the social media work for accountants and bookkeepers, which social site should you use, and what content should you post and share. So particularly in that part, I'm going to pick up from what we've been talking about today and explain how we can push that out through social media like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So that's the same time next week, Thursday, at 1 p.m. AEST and 3 p.m. New Zealand time. So I'm going to answer your questions now. If you want to find anything more about Bizink and our partnership with MYOB, it's bizinkonline.com, MYOB. And we've also got some free content that we're going to give you, which is a profit kit, a cash flow kit, or a growth kit. And that's some content to help you get started with content marketing that you can use on your website or wherever you want. So there's a survey after the webinar. You can choose which piece of content you want in there, and we'll get that sent out to you. I'm just going to see what questions we've got. So got a question from Ian who's asking if the session's been recorded. It is, and we'll send that out in an email. It'll either be later this afternoon or early tomorrow. So we'll upload the recording to YouTube, and we'll send you out a link to that. So obviously we're doing that repurposing thing that I've been talking about. Take one piece of content and turn it into something else, and we'll be sending that through an email, so we get kind of 3 bits of content, and we'll probably post it on social media, so you can see how it goes. You do something once and then a lot flows out from that. And Melissa is asking if we'll be providing the slides. We will, yeah. So they'll be going on to SlideShare, and we will include that. We will include that in the email that we send out after the webinar. So just got another question coming here, quite a long one, just reading it through. So Christina, I probably need to speak to you a little bit more on that. On your second question, on what's being covered next week, we're going to be talking about social media. So once you've created content, then social media is a really good way to distribute that content. And so we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about how to engage with people on social media. One of the, we often get asked, does social media work for accountants and bookkeepers? It massively does, and I think it's becoming more and more important. There's other things that you can use social media for, which I think are very underrated. So one of those would be research, keeping abreast of industry developments, what software kind of changes, legal changes, things like that. Engaging with clients, making sure that you're following your clients, seeing what they're talking about. It's really powerful as a research tool as well. So we're going to be talking about loads of different things to do with social media next week. Melissa is asking, she missed the webinar last week, if she's able to access that. Yeah, I mean, the Marketing Quick Starter website, which is marketingquickstarter.com, so where you'll have registered for this, that has all the recordings on there. So if you go back and look at the previous, well, there's only one previous session so far, you'll see the video and the link to the slides in there. So you can go and check it out in there, Melissa. Jane's asking, are we going to cover video marketing? Not in any detail. I mean, I guess what I would say is, I suppose I feel like we've covered that to some extent today, in that it's that medium and message thing is that the most important things to think about solving people's problems, and what form that content then takes. I think that's going to very much depend on who you're aiming at. Now, video can work really, really well. I think it's very, very powerful. It also can be quite committing to create videos, and it's hard work. So we're not going to cover that in a massive amount of detail. But But I think, yeah, I mean, it does work. I mean, if I go back to that framework that I like to talk about, so, you know, you're talking about trying to be credible and authentic. You know, you standing there in front of a camera, I think you can't get much more credible and authentic than that. And in, you know, profession where we're trying to demonstrate credibility, trust, expertise, then it's an ideal way to do marketing. But I'd say if you're getting started out with content marketing, it might be quite a big jump to jump straight into video marketing.